two more points. I think there's a huge tension between the attitude being portrayed for the last several years by the United Kingdom government as to how they should approach multiculturalism in a society and what is the predominant attitude within Scotland. I sat in a television studio a few months ago when Malcolm Chisholm was still a minister, and we were commenting on Jack Straw's, in my view, extraordinary decision to start dictating what people coming to see him in a constituency surgery should and shouldn't wear. I think it's the most extraordinary thing I've ever heard, that a member of Parliament there to serve the public and his or her constituents should start dictating to them how they presented themselves to him. And Malcolm Chisholm and I had exactly, he was the Communities Minister at the time, exactly the same attitude. We thought this was an extraordinary way for the former Home Secretary to behave. But the way that Straw was behaving wasn't an isolated stroke of madness by Jack Straw. It was the direction the government was moving in, not to accept, as previously was accepted, multicultural expressions of identity were no longer becoming acceptable. It might start just with full veil, which doesn't affect that many people, certainly not in Scotland, but it starts down the road, which can go very, very far indeed. And I was very pleased indeed that the Communities Minister in Scotland, like me, found that attitude unacceptable because of the sort of things it would unleash. We should have a position in Scottish society where we encourage badges of identity to supplement Scottishness. We have a position in Scotland where, according to the Roundtree Commission research from Stirling St Andrews University, that young Asians in Scotland feel more Scottish than their white counterparts. That is an extraordinary, solid expression of community solidarity, and we should treasure it in Scotland because it doesn't apply in many other places. And when the government are moving against multiculturalism, they are putting at risk community solidarity. And finally, and very briefly, this probably has nothing whatsoever to do with the vicious assault on a single asylum seeker. But I don't think a state which allows dawn raids against asylum seekers and their children can divorce itself entirely from the demonisation of certain people in society. And I do not accept that the Scottish Parliament, if any member of this panel wants to say, has got nothing to do with dawn raids and the actions of our police force or the support of our police force to the Home Office authorities, which actually happens in our country. And it's high time everyone in Scotland start to take responsibility for what's happening in our country and not try to shove away.
Before I move on to Bill, what I'd say as a warning to all panel members is that keep their responses short. Question and Bill.
The assault of this lady and her son was absolutely appalling. There is no way in which one can see other than that. The fact of the matter is that we all hope that the child and the lady herself will get a full recovery in this respect. I'm sure we will physically, but the mental effects of people who are subject to assaults of that nature, as you chairman know from your legal experience, are sometimes quite profound and quite sometimes long-lasting. I hope that the perpetrator is discovered, and I hope that he faces the full rigour of the law. It should be indicted in the High Court, as I'm sure it will be, and dealt with accordingly. Unfortunately, there are some very bad people out there, and there's a classic example. We're bound to defend society against people such as that, and I will certainly always go down that particular route.
Bill, do you recognise Islamophobia as a distinct form of prejudice that requires its own strategies?
I think that what we have got here is a group of Neds and one evil person. That's my reading of what is in the papers. Mindless morons. Whether or not there was any Islamophobia here, I don't know. That doesn't matter. It's affecting ruin and the child that matters. With regard to a strategy, the executive brought in racial aggravations and sectarian aggravation to offences. To my mind, it wasn't necessary to do so. There was absolutely no judge, sheriff or magistrate in Scotland who did not regard racism or sectarianism in any offence as being an aggravation. I know when I sat as a judge, I took that view very firmly. As to some absolute moron who's got no fit place in our society, and he should be dealt with accordingly.
Bringing in Margaret on the basis of the question that was asked by the Jimali and the fact that Scottish executives' racism figures themselves show increases around the time of 7/7. What would you say?
Well, I want to address the question directly because it's a very important question. I think there's a number of strands to it, and I do disagree quite strongly with Bill. And I mean, we have in the past many issues in that. I mean, I was also a Minister for Communities in the past and had a lot of work in relation to this area, and the word Islamophobia is now part of our documentation, is now part of our strategy, so that we do think it is something in society, it is a problem, it is pernicious, and it is something that requires a distinct strategy that needs to be addressed. I mean, the fundamental root of one strand of this is racism. And I think what we shouldn't do in Scotland is pat ourselves in the back and be cosy about everything that goes on. We need to realise the pernicious grip of racism and realise that it's pervasive. And one of the things I've learned in my job as a politician is you have to hear the experience of those who go through it. It's not good enough for me as a white person to think that I understand racism. I really have to understand it in all its various dimensions, and that's why our race equality strategy really is so important. And the work that we've done in the One Scotland Many Cultures campaign, which is now recognised actually throughout the world, as it is one of the first times a government has ever said we've got responsibility for tackling racism, not just for promoting diversity, which is part of it, but for actually understanding and tackling racism. So that's one part of it. I mean, whilst I was Minister for Communities, I was visiting the Muslim Women's Resource Centre. And I heard a lot of very detailed experiences from those women about some of the experiences they get. Particularly, I think, because of the way that they dress. They've got recognisable dress. I think women do feel a bit more targeted and do feel a bit more vulnerable, and that's just not acceptable. And we have to take all sorts of actions, and I think there are many actions you can take, both in the short and the long term, to begin to tackle that. I should say the Resource Centre was particularly pleased that they got their funding increased directly at that visit, but I know that's much more than that. But can I make two other quick points? One of it is I think there's an issue, two issues Scotland has to come to terms with. And one is that faith is a positive contribution to society and not something that we should be frightened of. I think particularly in the west of Scotland, in relation to some of the things Robert was saying, you know, sometimes we try and back off religion because it causes us problems, because we've thought about it in the past, and maybe it's a bit impolite to raise it. I think we've got to shake that off. I think we've got to say, I can respect people of different faith, but I know that they give a positive contribution because of the values they promote and the way they allow us to share and be with each other. There's many, many more positives than there are negatives, and I think we have to just, recognise Islam's contribution. And what I've done in the Muslim community when I was election agent for Mohammed Sarwar, when he became the first Asian from Scotland to be in the House of Commons, that was something I was very proud of. And I gained so much from my understanding of the Muslim community from that, and I think we've got to take that back in. But the other point in relation, I think Bill did have a point, there is a pernicious gang culture in Glasgow, and we've got to start being honest about it. I dealt this week with a case where a young man who had a learning disability was attacked with a very serious vicious attack with a bottle. Now that's not acceptable either, and we've got to come to terms with the level of violence. Got to tackle racism, got to recognise Islamophobia, got to have a diverse, supportive community, but be prepared to stand up against this kind of violence and support this woman in what she's doing.
Following on from that, the question I want to ask all panel members, and I want them to keep their answers short, is last week the new school uniform guidelines were released for consultation by the Education Secretary, Alan Johnston, which includes the right for head teachers to prevent pupils from wearing the niqab, the full Muslim veil, on the grounds of safety, security and teaching. Starting with Robert, do you accept the right of head teachers to prevent pupils from wearing the niqab?
It's a very different question. I mean, these guidelines for the avoidance of doubt, of course, apply in England. They're not
well, the question I'm asking is if you as a panel member accept
the position in Scotland. I think there is an issue, and I think it depends perhaps on the circumstances in which this applies. If you recall, it arose also with regard to people who were aircraft employees.
I'm asking about pupils
in particular ways. Pupils, I think it's difficult, I think, to see you can actually legitimately forbid people from having particular forms of dress in that way.